Fear the Pale Blue, What We Left Ourselves, Episode 7. Prior, the assignment arrives on a Wednesday at 6:47 in the morning, which is earlier than she expects and exactly when she's awake to receive it. She's been awake since 5, which isn't unusual these days. Sleep has become something she approaches rather than enters, a region she moves through without quite arriving, and by 5 most mornings, the light through the kitchen curtain is gray enough that continuing to lie still feels less like rest and more like postponement. She's at the kitchen table with the second coffee when the channel opens. The first coffee is still in the mug she's been carrying room to room since she got up, refilling it from the press on the counter. Too hot to drink for the first 20 minutes and then, typically, forgotten until it's gone cold. The second is intentional. She made it when she sat down at the table and she's actually drinking it. The apartment in the early morning has a quality she's been more conscious of lately, the quality of a space with someone living in it, and that someone having been in it for long enough that the space has absorbed their living's habits. The mug with the chipped rim on the counter. The stack of mail on the front hall table, sorted into 2 categories, things she's already dealt with and things she hasn't yet. Rather than filed or discarded, the sorting a function of a mind that flags things rather than resolving them. The hook by the door with 2 jackets on it rather than 1, the second one not hers, a jacket she's held for a friend for 6 months and keeps meaning to return, the friend not having asked for it back. Small evidence of a person rather than a person's absence. She's noticed this more since the read-in. The apartment as evidence, the geometry of a life arranged around habits that have calcified over 3 years in this space. Where she leaves her keys, which chair she uses at the table, the fact that she hasn't replaced the kitchen bulb that's been flickering since April because the light it produces when it doesn't flicker is a color she prefers to the alternative. Evidence of herself, accumulated without choosing to accumulate it, the way everything is accumulated. By repetition, she drinks the coffee and looks at the courtyard through the kitchen window and waits. The assignment notification comes through the standard channel, which is the first thing she notes. Standard channel, standard format, nothing in the metadata that announces itself as unusual. She reads the operational summary first, the way she reads everything now, looking for what the document is trying not to say. And the cover language is exactly what cover language sounds like when it's been assembled by someone who knows what operational documents look like and has made this one look like that. Retrieval operation, outer system, decommissioned monitoring installation, crew-based, authorization chain attached. She sets the device face down on the kitchen table and drinks some of the coffee. Then she picks it up again and reads the routing path. The Tier 5 signature is there. She recognizes it the way she'd recognize a handwriting she's been reading for months, the shape of it distinct now, recognizable, as it hadn't been before the P Street work, before the 4 days in the back office with the laptop that wasn't supposed to leave the building. The same architecture that's been managing her channel since before she knew there was anything above her channel to manage. The same shape in the metadata, the same blank at the terminus that told her, months ago, that what she was looking at didn't officially exist. She doesn't move for a moment after reading the routing path. Just sits at the kitchen table with the second coffee and the device face up in front of her, and the kitchen window behind her throwing the gray gold of a Georgetown morning in late July across the table's surface. A pigeon lands on the courtyard wall outside the window and walks along it with the purposeful indifference of an animal that has concluded the world exists to inconvenience it, and then flies off again without explanation. The device gets a reply, the word that means yes in ICD protocol. Thousands of times that word. She uses it now. The channel closes. The assignment enters her queue as accepted. She sets the device down again and finishes the coffee, which has gone lukewarm while she was reading. The mug has a small chip in the rim she keeps meaning to address and hasn't. She drinks from the unchipped side out of habit. Outside, the pigeon or a different pigeon has returned to the wall and is working its way back in the opposite direction. In the front hall, the drawer is open. The drawer is visible from the kitchen table, the sliver of amber plastic inside it, the same pale composite disc she's been carrying since Philadelphia without ever once looking at the device and thinking about that word and what it now costs. She goes to get another sheet of paper, realizes she doesn't need more paper, sits back down. She pulls the legal pad across the table and adds 2 lines to the 4th column. Routing path confirmed Tier 5. Assignment accepted 0647. Then she sits with the legal pad for another few minutes, looking at the 4 columns, and then she closes it and leaves it in the center of the table where she can see it from anywhere in the kitchen. And she gets up and goes to stand at the kitchen window. The courtyard below is quiet at this hour. The dogwood at the far edge catches the early light at an angle that makes it look like it's been placed there on purpose, which it probably was, 50 or 60 years ago when the building was put up and someone decided there should be a courtyard tree. A squirrel is working the base of the wall near the path lamp, checking something methodically, moving on, circling back. The ordinary machinery of a morning. She stands at the window for a while. Then she goes to shower, and when she comes back to the kitchen, the pigeon is gone and the squirrel is gone and the courtyard is just the courtyard, doing nothing in particular, and the day starts. The next 2 days have a quality she doesn't have a word for and doesn't try to name. The days have a quality she moves through the way you move through a space you've stopped needing to look at, except she's looking. Different. Walking in the mornings. Thursday afternoon. The market on Prospect. A basket that gradually fills with things she considers, and in some cases puts back and in other cases keeps. Bread, coffee. The brand of black tea she's been going through a box a week since the read-in, and will not be here to continue going through. She buys the tea anyway. It makes no practical sense. She buys it and takes it home and puts it in the cabinet. The market on a Thursday in late July has a texture. The summer Friday adjacent quiet of a store whose regular customers have rearranged their weeks around the heat, shopping earlier or later or differently. And the aisles have that slightly unhurried quality that comes when the usual density of people has thinned out, and the store reasserts its original shape around whoever's actually there. Moving through it at a pace she doesn't usually take in a grocery store, stopping to look at things she's not buying. The end cap display of grilling equipment still up 2 weeks past when grilling season peaked. The hand-lettered sign above the deli counter advertising a fish preparation she's never tried. The sign read twice. She's not going to order the fish, a 3rd time anyway. At the checkout, she ends up behind an elderly man who is asking the cashier about a price difference on olive oil, an olive oil from a manufacturer, and the cashier doesn't know the answer and is looking at her screen for the answer. And the elderly man is patient about this, patient in the way of a person who has long since stopped expecting the world to move at his preferred rate and has made his peace with waiting while it catches up. The transaction takes 4 minutes longer than a different transaction would have taken. Standing behind him, the 4 minutes passing without performing patience, just letting them be what they are, which is 4 minutes of an ordinary store on an ordinary July afternoon. The groceries home in 2 bags, 1 in each hand, the way she always carries them when there are 2 bags, and the walk from the market to the apartment is 12 minutes, and the walk from the market to the apartment is 12 minutes, which she walks at the grocery carrying pace she's developed without deciding to, slightly slower than her default but not impeded, the pace of someone who knows where they're going and has enough time to get there. She passes the corner store. The bell rings as she passes because someone's going in, not because she's going in, and the sound arrives a beat after she's already passed it, catching her at the wrong moment, which makes it louder than it usually is, and she registers it without turning around. The C&O canal on Thursday morning is lower than she's seen it all summer. The water line has dropped below the marks the spring levels left on the stone, and the smell coming off the surface is a slow green smell, the smell of still water and heat, not unpleasant but dense. The towpath south from the lock at 30th Street, past the place where someone has stacked 3 large flat rocks in a cairn near the waterline that wasn't there last week. Past the dead tree, the pileated woodpecker has been working since April, now reduced to a geometric pattern of excavations that looks less like bird damage and more like something left intentionally. The bend near Fletcher's Cove. She stands for a while looking at the water which moves at this section without appearing to, the current barely visible at the surface. A great blue heron stands in the shallows on the far bank, motionless, watching the water with the complete attention of a thing that has nothing else to do and knows it. She's seen it twice before this summer, always at this bend, always alone. The paperback is in her bag. She's been carrying it since May, 20 pages from the end, picking it up and putting it down. On the bench at the bend, the last 20 pages in one sitting, 35 minutes, and when she closes it, she sits with it closed in her lap for a while, looking at the heron, which has not moved. The heron holds. The surface of the canal moves without moving. She holds the book. Then she puts it in her bag and stands up and walks back. She sat longer than she meant to. The bench has the quality of benches near water, something to do with the humidity and the shade that makes time move differently, and she's been sitting in the quality of it since she finished the book and hasn't noticed the minutes accumulating. When she looks at the position of the light through the canopy, she estimates it's been closer to an hour than 35 minutes, and she's not sorry about this. Months of meaning to sit somewhere for longer than the task required. Months of doing it without being good at it, and then good at it for a while. The reading and the walking and the looking at things that didn't require anything from her. And now she's leaving, and the practice has to be good enough. She looks at the heron one more time before she gets up. It still hasn't moved from its position on the far bank, the complete motionlessness of a thing that has made the calculation that patience costs less than movement. She thinks, briefly and without following it, about what it would be like to have that patience as a structural condition rather than something you build through practice and lose when you stop practicing. Then she gets up. The towpath north has different light than the towpath south had at this hour. The sun now behind the ridge of Georgetown's buildings rather than ahead of it. The canal surface going from silver to a deeper gray-green as she walks. A couple with a stroller passes, both looking at their phones, the stroller navigating the uneven towpath on its own momentum. A man throwing a tennis ball for a dog that doesn't return it, just stands in the water staring at some point beyond the ball. The man explaining something to the dog, with the reasonable patience of someone who has stopped expecting results. The bench where she sat earlier, now occupied by a teenager eating something from a paper bag, with the focused attention of someone who hasn't eaten since this morning and knows it. The book's finished is in her bag, which feels different from the book it was when she put it in this morning. She doesn't examine this. Then she walks. On the way back through the streets, she makes a small detour, adding 2 blocks she doesn't strictly need, not for any operational reason, but because the block on 31st between M and Prospect has a stretch of row houses she has always found the most coherent thing in the neighborhood. 3 houses in a row that were built together and have aged together and whose facades hold the coherence of things that were never meant to be separated. She walks past them slowly. They don't look back. At the corner store, she goes in for the first time in months. The bell is the same bell. The man behind the counter is someone she doesn't know, younger than the man who's usually here, absorbed in something behind the counter. A bottle of water she doesn't need, and a small package of cookies she also doesn't need, carried out into the late afternoon. 1 cookie on the front step, standing, and then goes home. In the apartment, the refrigerator is running through its cycle, and the courtyard through the kitchen window is going gold at the edges, the late light hitting the far wall, and she stands at the window eating another cookie without sitting down, not going anywhere, just standing in the kitchen of her apartment on a Thursday evening with a cookie in her hand, and the refrigerator running and the gold light on the courtyard wall. And it's a very ordinary moment in an apartment that's going to be very ordinary for 2 or 3 more days, and then it isn't going to be hers for a while. And she stands in the gold light of it and doesn't think anything, just stands. The gold light moves. The kitchen window faces west enough that the late afternoon hits the courtyard wall at this angle for maybe 40 minutes before it drops below the roofline. And she stood at this window for 3 years and watched it happen and not watched it happen. She watches it release. The wall goes from warm to cool over the space of about 10 minutes, the shadow arriving gradually enough that there's no single moment when the change is complete, just the sustained process of a thing becoming different from what it was. The cookie finished. She washes the plate her errand-run cookies came off of, and then washes the coffee mug from this morning she'd left in the sink, and then the glass from yesterday also left. The water runs cold until it's warm, and then she finishes the dishes and dries her hands and leaves the kitchen as clean as it was when she moved in, more or less. The cleanliness that comes from a space occupied by one person who makes small decisions rather than large ones. She doesn't go out again on Thursday evening, reading in the front room for a while, the new book, and then she goes to bed at 10, which is earlier than she usually does and exactly right for what the next 2 days require. Thursday evening, the courtyard cat comes through on its usual circuit, gray and unhurried, crossing the paving stones at the same angle it always takes, which she's worked out over 3 years is the most direct route between 2 gaps in the fence she's never been able to locate. It pauses once, near the path lamp, and looks directly at her window, and then continues and is gone. The cat goes. She sleeps badly on Thursday night and well on Friday, which is the reverse of what she'd expected. Friday is the day before she leaves, 6:30, and the sprinkler 2 doors down is going, the timer running regardless of the drought. She lies still for a few minutes listening to it, then gets up. No walk on Friday morning. In the afternoon, she reviews the operational documentation in detail for the first time. She's been leaving it until she was ready, which she has understood since she accepted the assignment meant leaving it until she could look at it without her attention sliding. The cover documents, the crew roster, the vessel's designation, the chain of authorization signatures, she goes through them in order, the way she goes through everything, giving each element enough time to show her what it's going to show. The crew roster stops her. Not a name she recognizes from any operation she's run, any directory she has access to, but the position, crew specialist, recovery support. She knows what that position is supposed to look like in an operational document, who fills it and how they get assigned to it. The name in this slot didn't get there through standard assignment logic. It got there through something else. The placement has a shape she recognizes. The authorization chain comes next. 3 signatures in the chain are standard ICD administrative signatures she recognizes by format. The 4th is something else. Not an ICD format she knows, not exactly, but the structure of it, the way the fields are ordered, the way the identifiers are formatted, sits in her recognition the way a word sits in recognition when you've read it in a different context and can't immediately retrieve which context that was. She's seen this format before, not in a document she can name. In the negative space of her own Season 2 assignments, in the routing anomalies, in the shape of what was left when things were bent in a direction they hadn't originally been pointed. She sits with both of these for a long time. The same hand that bent her assignments in the early months, the hand she registered as a person and not a policy, the hand that let certain things survive and redirected others, the hand she's never had a name for, has arranged this crew, this departure. This version of an operation the ICD believes is its own. No name yet. The shape, the same one she's been tracing since the early months, resolved now into something with an edge she can follow. The documentation signature and the crew roster placement are 2 points of the same line. 2 lines go into the watching place. The documentation closes. No report on the documentation signature. No report on the crew roster anomaly. Reporting either of those things would require explaining how she recognized them, which would require explaining everything else, and she is not prepared for that. She does not begin. The closed documentation held for a while, not doing anything, just holding the shape of what she's found. The same hand that bent her early assignments. The same hand that let certain things survive and arranged the negative space of her Season 2. She has never had a name for this hand, has had only the shape, and she still doesn't have a name, but the shape is clearer now than it was, an edge she can trace in 2 directions instead of 1. What she understands about the hand, from what she's seen, it operates at a level inside the machine that gives it access to operational logistics, crew assignments, authorization chains. Not the Tier 5 structure managing her channel, which is the Level 0 man's architecture. Not the Echo's back channel, which is its own category. Something else. A 4th presence, operating from inside the same machine the ICD believes is operating normally, bending the machine's own outputs in a direction the machine doesn't know to track. She's been carrying 3 claims on the recovery since Episode 6. The ICD, the Echoes, the Level 0 mans. What she's looking at now is the architecture of someone who has made sure she could go, which means someone has a 4th interest in the recovery. an interest she doesn't have enough information yet to characterize. She doesn't write this in the legal pad. It's not ready to be written. The fourth column was supposed to be the last column. She's not certain anymore that it is. There's something else. In the supporting notes attached to the crew documentation, a brief operational history of the vessel, a technical summary, references she'd usually skim, a name appears that stops her for a second. Not the name itself. She can't do anything with the name directly. What stops her is the feeling the name produces, a click somewhere in her memory that doesn't resolve into a source. She's encountered this name before in some form, in some operational context she can't immediately retrieve. It's present in her memory as an edge without a shape. She holds the feeling, tries to trace it backward. It doesn't go anywhere. This feeling she knows. It's real. This isn't her mind generating patterns from insufficient data. She's good at that distinction, has been good at it for 15 years. The click is real. The source, for now, is inaccessible. She writes the name in the margin of the legal pad with a question mark. Then she thinks about it for another moment and crosses out the question mark and writes the name again, without it. She doesn't pull any files on the name. Pulling files would register in her access log at a time when she's been unusually active in the index systems. And unusually active right before a departure is a pattern she doesn't want visible. The documentation closes. Into the legal pad, name and supporting notes, prior contact, form unknown. And then she closes the legal pad and leaves it in the center of the table. The day continues. She eats something in the evening, standing at the counter, not really tracking what it is. The refrigerator has things in it she bought Thursday that she's not going to eat before tomorrow. She finishes what's in her hand, rinses the plate. Through the kitchen window, the courtyard is dark except for the path lamp, which throws its usual cone across the paving stones. And somewhere out there, the courtyard cat is either doing its circuit or it isn't. No way to tell from this angle. She takes the legal pad from the kitchen table and sits with it on the couch in the front room, which she almost never uses for this. The front room faces the street and she uses it for sitting with the window open in the evenings, and for leaving things she hasn't decided where to put yet, and for not much else. And tonight she sits on the couch with the legal pad open to the 4 columns and reads through them the way she reads evidence. Fresh. Despite having read them 100 times, because reading through them again before the operation is the right operational practice, and because she doesn't have another reason she needs and this one is sufficient. The 4 columns, the Tier 5 routing architecture, the intercepted file built to her profile, the Portland asset, the second unidentified cluster, the one she clocked in the K Street stairwell and still hasn't resolved into certainty. All of it mapped, all of it held, none of it reported. 4 months of unauthorized intelligence work in the margin of an institutional relationship that still technically classifies her as a field operative doing her function. She's not doing her function, hasn't been for 4 months. What she's been doing is something without a category, which is both new and not new. The job without the institution behind it, the operational discipline applied to something the institution doesn't know it needs. She looks at the almost recognition she wrote in the margin this afternoon, the name with the line through the question mark. She tries once more to place it, the way you check a door you've already confirmed is locked, knowing it's locked but wanting to confirm. It doesn't open. The source is still inaccessible. She closes the legal pad. The street outside the front window is doing its late evening thing. A car every few minutes, the oak moving slightly in a wind she can't feel from inside, the lit windows of the row house across the way where she's watched a sequence of tenants without ever learning anything about them beyond the hours they keep their lights on. She watches the windows for a while, the lights on the second floor, the yellow of a lamp she's been seeing in that window since her first winter here. Tomorrow she leaves. The day after tomorrow, or the day after that, everything will be different. Different in a register she's been working around acknowledging since she accepted the assignment, and before that since the Echo's ask arrived, and before that since the read-in. Not visibly different to anyone outside. Different in the way that things are different once you know what you know and have done what you've done and can't unknow and undo them. She doesn't sit with this long. Months to sit with the approaching version of it, and she's done what sitting with it can do. What's left is the doing of it. And the doing starts tomorrow, and she's as ready for it as she's going to be. She puts the legal pad on the coffee table and goes to bed. The sleep is different from Thursday and from Friday. She falls asleep before she's finished cataloging the sounds of the building at 11 on a Saturday, which means she was more tired than she knew, which is a fact about herself she has always been the last to register. Downstairs at a little after 9. Walt is at his desk. The radio is going, low, a game somewhere in the middle innings. The announcer's voice in that particular register that means nothing is happening and nothing is about to happen, and the nothing is the point. The reading glasses are pushed up on his forehead where they always end up, and the crossword is going in the margin of the maintenance log. 3 letters in a row filled in, a 4th under consideration, the pencil held loosely against the page. She crosses the lobby to the desk. He looks up, and his face does the thing it does, which is open, unhurried, genuinely pleased to see her in the way that people who are genuinely pleased to see you look, without making a thing of it. She's come down ostensibly to check whether a package she's expecting has arrived. This is true and also not the reason she came down, and both things are true at the same time. The radio is doing what it does at this hour of a game, which is less announcing than companionship, the announcer's voice serving as ambient confirmation that the game is still happening, that the world is still organized around things that take 9 innings to resolve. The same ambient she's heard from the stairwell door countless times without ever following the game. She doesn't follow it now either. It's just present, the radio, the same way the crossword is present and the thermos is present, and the reading glasses pushed up on Walt's forehead are present. The whole arrangement of a man in a particular relationship with the hours of the overnight shift, everything in its place. 11 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 9 at night, occasionally 4 in the morning. She's been in this lobby at all of those hours and passed Walt at his desk and registered him as the fixed point he is and kept going. 3 years. Too many times to count. Enough that the counting stopped long ago, which is the definition of a thing that has become part of the structure of a life. What she's doing now is different. She's standing on the other side of the desk long enough that it isn't a passing. Walt doesn't make anything of this. He talks about the canal and the heating system and the forecast, about the window latch on the 2nd floor he's been wrestling with for 2 weeks, and whether the part he ordered is going to be the right part or the part that looks right but fails in the first cold snap. This conversation, she's noticed, he has with himself and with the building and with whoever happens to be present, a running adjustment of the building's small crises against his own knowledge of what it requires. She listens to him, not the way she usually absorbs him, as background detail present and noted and not pulled front. She's actually listening. She doesn't know why she's listening differently. She doesn't know why she's listening differently, or she does know and doesn't say it to herself, which is the same thing in the end. This heat, Walt says to the thermos or to the general proposition of it. Even the lobby gets it in August. I don't know what they designed this building for, but it was in August. It stays cooler in the mornings, she says. For about an hour, he agrees. And then, he doesn't finish this sentence, but the building's August is a self-completing thought. She asks how long he's been here, already knowing, 28 years, but asking anyway, and he tells her. And something in the telling lands differently than the knowing did, 28 years narrated rather than listed, which gives it a weight the number alone doesn't have. 28 years in this building. The building as it was when he started, and the building as it is now, and all the versions in between. The pipes and the fixtures and the tenants who came and went. The things he fixed and the things he decided not to fix because some things held better unfixed. You ever think about doing something else? She says. He looks at her with the mild interest of a man who has been asked this in various forms by various people, and has found a way to answer it that's honest without being heavy. Sure, he says. Less and less. Used to think about it more. He turns the pencil over in his hand. At some point you look around and realize you've put a lot of time into something. You know how it works. You know where the walls are. Feels like a waste to throw that out. She doesn't say anything to this. What about you, he says, not looking up from the crossword, filling in a letter with the unhurried confidence of a man who's worked out the answer but is double-checking. You got plans. She's already answered this once. Probably travel, says again because it's still true and because it's still the right kind of answer. He nods. That's good. He fills in another letter. Different when you come back. The same place looks different. I went to my brother's in Pittsburgh after the knee surgery about 6 years ago, 3 weeks. Came back and the building looked like a building I'd never worked in. Took me a week to get it back. She holds this, what he said, which he hasn't directed at her and which she's taken anyway. She doesn't comment on it. The fluorescent light above the desk is slightly yellow, the yellow of a bulb that's been in a fixture longer than it was designed to be, still good enough not to replace. The stain on the north wall is not visible from this angle, which means she has to remember it's there rather than see it. At some point she says, "Good night, package for you came in yesterday," Walt says. I signed for it. He turns in the chair, slow with the knee, and retrieves a flat envelope from behind the desk. Thought you might not be checking the mail much lately. He hands it over. An institution she has a membership with, an annual journal probably, a membership she signs up for and never cancels. She tucks it under her arm. "Thanks," she says. "Sure." He leans back in the chair the way he does when there's no immediate task pressing, which is to say when he's been sitting at this desk for enough hours that the urgency of the early shift has settled into the comfortable maintenance of being present. "Hot one tomorrow," they're saying. "I heard. August." He shakes his head at the word, which is a thing he does with the words for months he considers to be primarily weather rather than time. "You got plans?" The question hangs in the air between them with the lightness of a question that isn't really a question. He's not asking where she's going. He's never asked where she's going. The question doesn't have a direct answer and both of them know it and neither of them would say that out loud. "Probably travel," she says. He looks at the crossword. That's good. Good to get out of the city in August. Empties out. He fills in the fourth letter he'd been considering, studies the result. "Water's been something this summer. You seen the canal? Yesterday. Low." He shakes his head again. "Remember 3 years ago, it went so low they had to close the lower locks for a month. Hoping we don't get that again." He writes another letter. "Though I guess the summer's not over." She shifts the envelope under her arm. The fluorescent light above the desk makes everything in the lobby look slightly more deliberate than it actually is. The quality of light in spaces that weren't designed to be inhabited but accommodate habitation anyway. She stood in this lobby at this hour more times than she can account for, passing through it, or stopping in it, or sitting in the chair across from the desk where he sometimes puts mail he's expecting her to collect. The lobby has been a room she's moved through for 3 years. She's standing in it now looking at the water stain on the far wall she's never noticed before, a ghost pale oval near the ceiling on the north side, probably from a pipe leak repaired years before she moved in. "That stain up there," she says. "North wall, how long has that been there?" Walt turns to look unhurried with the authority of a man who has cataloged every surface in this building. "Oh, that's been there since before I started," he says. "Pipe in the unit above, probably the early 80s. The super before me had it fixed, but the stain's it's in the plaster." He turns back. "You never noticed it before." "I never looked." "Huh." He considers that. "I stop seeing things after a while. Then something makes me look and there they are." He writes another letter. She stands at the desk for another minute, which is longer than the package required and both of them know it. And he doesn't make anything of it, which is the thing about Walt that she has never found a way to name and has been aware of for 3 years. He makes nothing of what doesn't need making of. Space held without requiring you to explain why you needed it. At some point she says good night and he says to her what he always says. The safe home compression of everything he means when he says good night to someone he's been watching come and go for 3 years. And she turns toward the stairwell. At the door she stops with her hand on the frame. She's not sure what makes her do it. Some impulse she doesn't examine. The way she doesn't examine most impulses that feel right before she has language for them. She turns and looks at him, and he's already looking at her, which means he didn't go back to the crossword the way he usually does. And they look at each other across the lobby for a moment that has no transactional content at all, just duration. Just the fact of two people who have been in each other's periphery for 3 years, standing in a lobby at 9 in the evening with a fluorescent light above one of them, and the oval water stain on the north wall behind her that she's never noticed before tonight. And then she goes up. She doesn't sleep well on Friday night either, as it turns out, but it's a different quality of not sleeping than Thursday was. Thursday was unresolved restlessness, the mind pulling at things she'd already filed. Friday is something quieter, not resolution but acceptance, the quality of a body that understands it's the night before and has made its peace with what that means. She gets up at 5:30, makes the coffee, drinks it at the kitchen window. The courtyard in the early morning light, the dogwood catching it, the path lamp still on but beginning to lose the argument with the day. She sits there longer than the coffee requires. The courtyard is doing its early morning thing, the pigeons, the squirrel working the oak, the ambient of a residential courtyard before the building has properly woken up. She's watched this courtyard from this window for 3 years. It has never required anything of her, which she has always appreciated without examining why. She finishes the coffee and rinses the mug and puts it in the drying rack, which is where it goes when she bothers, which is less often than it should be. This morning she bothers. Chipped rim face down in the rack, the chip not visible in this position, just a mug in a rack in a kitchen at 6:40 on a Saturday in August. One more look at the courtyard. The path lamp has made its peace with the morning and gone off. The dogwood is fully in the light now, a slightly different shade of green than it was 10 minutes ago, the light arriving from a higher angle. The squirrel has been replaced by a pigeon attending to the paving stones with the complete attention of a thing that believes the paving stones might yield something. She watches it for a minute. Then it gives up and leaves. She moves through the apartment with the specific care of someone doing something for the last time in its current form. Not ceremonially, just carefully. The windows. She latches two and leaves one in the bedroom cracked the way she always leaves it in summer. For no reason she's thought through past the habit of it. The same crack she's left since she moved in. The width she's arrived at through trial and finding it still there in the mornings. The refrigerator. She throws out the things that won't survive the time she'll be gone, which is more than a week but less than a month. The dates in the documentation she's committed to memory the way she commits all operational timelines to memory without deciding to just by reading them twice. She's done variations of this before, the clearing out before an extended operation, the small housekeeping of a life that expects to be interrupted. Knows what to throw out and what will hold and what she's going to come back to and be grateful she left. The bread, out. The coffee, stays. The jar of jam she bought 2 weeks ago and has been ignoring, out. The tea she bought Thursday knowing she wouldn't drink it before she left, stays, for the specific reason that she will want it when she comes back. She thinks about that for a moment. When she comes back, the assumption embedded in the domestic logistics that she will come back, which she knows she will, which the operational documentation confirms, and which is still an assumption that requires making, and which she makes the same way she makes all of the other assumptions she can't verify, by acting as though it's true and watching to see if anything argues against it. Nothing argues against it. She puts the jam in the recycling and moves on. The stove, the lamp, the overhead in the bathroom. She moves through them automatically and then does a second pass less automatically, checking the checking. The drawer in the front hall is open. She looks at it. The pale composite disc rests inside it, a small gray thing, a delivery mechanism that has delivered what it came to deliver. She picks it up and puts it in the interior left pocket of her jacket, which is already holding the photograph. Never both in the same pocket before. They sit there now, the disc and the photograph, both flat, one stiff and one slightly less so, a thickness she can feel when she runs her finger along the outside of the pocket. The legal pad. She picks it up and looks at the 4 columns, the 5th thing written in the margin last night. Folds the pad closed. It goes in the bag with the other things she's taking, not the suitcase, the bag she takes on operations that aren't supposed to look like operations. She does the last walk of the rooms. The bedroom, the bathroom, the front room, the kitchen. The kitchen doorway for a moment, the 2 mugs from this morning neither quite empty nor worth washing. She leaves them. The stairs down are quiet. The building is quiet at this hour, 6:40 on a Saturday in August, the city not yet up in any version she recognizes. The service entrance is propped with the brick she put there on her way down, and outside the air is the kind of air that hasn't decided yet what kind of day it wants to be, warm already, but not committed to it, the temperature still negotiating with the early hour. She steps out and the door closes behind her. Above the roofline of the building across the alley, the sky is pale blue. Not the deep blue of midday or the white blue of high summer at noon, the pale, specific blue of a July morning before the heat builds. The color of the sky is when the day is new enough not to have committed to its character yet. She's seen this color 1,000 mornings from her kitchen window, but from inside it. Now outside, the sky above Georgetown opened past what the window allows. Behind her and above her at the same time, the way sky is when you're under it. She walks toward the car at the corner of 30th and N. Does not look back.